Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Do you think that that's loud enough? Perfect. My name is Heather Raya, and I'm a Senior Prevention Program Manager for the Oklahoma Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services. I also have Carrie Daniels here with me. She is our Prevention Epidemiologist, and she is also the coordinator of our State Epidemiological Outcomes Work Group, or the STO. I know that that's a lot of acronyms and that those titles kind of all blur together, so I will tell you that when people ask me what I do now, I've stopped saying I'm a Senior Prevention Program Manager for the Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services, because I think no one leaves hearing that knowing any more they did than when they asked. So what I've started doing now is when people ask me that, I will just simply say, let me ask you if you have ever been affected, or anyone that you know or love has been affected by substance use or mental illness. And I've never ever met anyone that has said no to those questions. And so when they tell me yes, as they almost always do, I talk to them about how I'm in prevention, and both substance abuse and addiction as well as mental illness are absolutely preventable. And my job is to consult with everyone in our community, no matter what their role, and let them know how they can be part of the solution of preventing mental illness and substance abuse. And so as such, that's why I'm here today to talk to you all in the education field, because you play a critical role in the prevention of substance abuse and also mental illness. But furthermore, I think what's exciting and what's convenient, and there's not a lot of convenient things in our world, right? So maybe what's convenient is that when you work on the risk and protective factors for preventing substance abuse and mental illness, what the research now shows us, particularly the research out of the University of Washington School of Social Work, is that these same risk factors, when you're looking at those things, are actually also risk factors for poor academic performance, and even more specifically, poor performance on standardized tests, which I know are all things that education is very focused on, and it has to be very focused on. So the good news is that when we work together, we can help our students thrive in all of these different aspects and have a better quality of life and outcomes. Since we have a small group, I wanted to ask you all really quickly what area of the state you're from, but I'm not sure how to see their responses. Will it pop up? Okay.
I'll grab the attendance real quick here.
Oh, okay.
I think that'll show you.
Okay. Okay, so we have Kurt from Mustang. Fantastic. Thank you, Kurt. And I was curious if any of you on here happen to know, I know it's a little bit maybe difficult to respond on the chat window, so don't worry too much, but if you know if you are currently, if your district and if your school specifically is participating in the Oklahoma Prevention Needs Assessment Survey of students, I'd be curious to know if you are participating in that or not. Okay, so we have Mustang hasn't heard either way. Mustang, I believe, or Kirk, I believe Mustang does participate, but I'm not certain about the alternative ed division specifically. So that would be something that we can help you look into. And I'm new to this technology, so forgive me. Okay, we have one, I don't know. Kim, that's okay? Kim, where are you from? Duncan, okay. Duncan is doing it. I'm not certain about the alt ed, so we'll find out. We don't know. I saw one we don't know, but it went by fast. Okay, so at least half of you either we're not sure. Okay, I kind of know where we are, and that will help us, and that's fine. We can also, Carrie Daniels' email, who is sort of the project director for OPNA, will be up at the end of this, and then my information is on the front slide as well. So we are happy to help you figure out what your previous participation has been and how we can help you ensure your alternative school is participating. Okay, so the first thing that I want to do is thank you so much for your time today. I understand that you all are very busy, particularly with everything that's been going on this year. I know that, you know, I don't walk in your shoes directly, but I do have a sister who is a public educator, and my mother was a single mom and a public educator my entire life. She recently retired, but now she's a literacy specialist part-time, still in a public school. So I feel I've also been an adjunct at a public university, so I feel very committed to our public schools, and I feel like I have some understanding secondhand of the many challenges and the many different issues that you face. And so while I can't speak to that from lived experience, I do know that thank you is in order because I know how busy you all are. So I really appreciate you taking this time to come and learn about this issue that we feel is very important, not only to us, but also to you. So let's talk a little bit about that. The Oklahoma Prevention Needs Assessment Survey is a survey done through a partnership with the State Department of Education and the Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services. And what it is, it's a survey of students. It's conducted every other year. So we do 6th, 8th, 10th, and 12th grade. And we basically ask them everything that we need to know about prevention in order to prevent problems. And I'm going to get into more specifically what that means in a minute, but that's the overall purpose. I also wanted to let you know that we at the Department of Mental Health in the Prevention Division, and if it hasn't been clear so far, I usually try to denote that while we obviously have a treatment division at the Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services, Carrie and I actually come from the Prevention Division. So our role is really to prevent these problems before substance abuse issues or before mental illness ever start. So we fund a regional prevention coordinator system throughout Oklahoma. Every single county in Oklahoma is covered by one of these RPCs. They are there to serve as your prevention consultants and your technical advisors. They can help you figure out what in the world to do about some of these issues around substance use and mental illness that certainly impact the work that you're doing. They can also advise you on, you know, who has time to go through and read tons and tons of literature and evidence and all those things. They can help you with that process to save you time. Also, we have lots of partnerships which take a full hour to go into in and of themselves, but we have lots of partnerships with our tribal entities. Many of those tribal entities also have prevention programs. We work very closely together. So these initiatives are happening throughout Oklahoma. We also work with other community partners, and our role is to try to implement evidence-based strategies in your area. A lot of them are community-based because we want the community to be what we call low risk. We want that community to be safe. I hear all the time that teachers and educators struggle with all of the problems that students bring into the classroom, and that is a huge challenge, and that oftentimes you can't control those environments. And so we sort of do two things in prevention. One, we try to improve the environment that kids are coming from, that family environment and that community environment, and that culture that they're coming from when they get into that classroom. But also we try to advise you on, okay, even if you can't control all of those outside pieces, what can we control? What can we improve in that school environment to help you be able to do your job more easily? So the data from this survey is used to evaluate our prevention efforts. It's used to choose hotspots. And it's used to figure out what part of the state needs certain interventions. So one important reason to take it, outside of what you can do in your own school, is that you help all of these community partners figure out what your needs are. If we do not know what the needs of your students are, it's very difficult to support you in that community level. Another important thing is that many schools use the OPNA as a basis for applying for grant funding and reporting for schools. As I understand, alternative ed isn't, you know, a particularly highly funded area, as most things are not in our state. And so if you are like us, we're always looking for additional grants and additional funding and different and better ways to report the success of the things we are doing so we can try to get more resources. And then, like I said, schools can use this data in-house to deal with some of these issues that do come in from that outside environment. And lastly, the reason it's important, I've touched on this a little bit, is that substance abuse obviously affects academic performance. It's very hard to be performing at your best academically or in any other area of your life if you have an substance abuse issue or an undiagnosed need for treatment, either in the realm of mental illness or substance abuse. Okay, and I just wanted to show you all a minute. These are our regional prevention coordinators that I talked to you about. As you can see, we're not an extremely heavily funded division either. We are able to divide the state into 17 regions. Each of the RPCs in these regions cover, typically 5 to 7 counties. Obviously, the Oklahoma one only covers Oklahoma County because of population, and the same with Tulsa County. So it's kind of a mixture of geographic area and population that determines the region size. But you are covered by an RPC. So if you're not making contact with your RPC, I encourage you to do so because they can help consult with you around prevention planning and prevention needs. Okay, so once again, I know that time is of the essence, particularly this year where we've had some unplanned things and now we're scrambling to figure out how to make up for everything. However, I just wanted to let you know that the OPNA is a short survey and it is only done every other year. So for literally less than 1 hour of student time, oftentimes as little as 20 minutes, just every other year, we can gather really valuable data that we can't get anywhere else that not only can you use, but that your community will use. I can promise you your RPC will and does use the data of everyone that participates to try to address needs. So when you think about everything that is at the table and all the resources that wrap around, the payoff for this less than 1 hour of student time every other year is extremely high. There are 2 ways that you can do it. You can do it online or in paper, and I believe that we're going to go into that more here in a minute. I also want to let you know that it is an anonymous survey. We only survey every other grade year. It has been conducted in Oklahoma every even year since 2004. And about 1/2 of states in our country are currently doing needs assessment that are very similar to the OPNA. So some specifics about the survey. So this survey asks questions about the behaviors that students or their friends may or may not have done. Things that we should be concerned about, like early onset of antisocial behavior, early onset of any drug use, which we do find initiation as early as 6th grade, which is sooner than we would like because it sets up that child for lifelong problems. They're 6 times more likely to have lifelong problems with, for example, alcohol if they start early. So we're very concerned about if they have any lifetime use and when that use started. And it asks about if they've ridden with somebody that's driven drunk, that's driving drunk, those sorts of things. It also, and this is where I think it's really key, it asks questions designed to gather information about risk and protection. So in my opinion, it doesn't do you a ton of good to know that you have a problem if you don't understand what is driving that problem. So that is exactly what the Oklahoma Prevention Needs Assessment looks for. And we know every school is different. I've never been in any 2 schools that are exactly the same, even if they might be experiencing the same problem. Those environments and those cultures are just different, and there's almost always different reasons that these schools may be experiencing the same problem. And we find that even from community to community. So I think you all know that better than anyone, and so we believe it's really important to not just look at state level data, but in order for your school site to address issues, that you really know what is going on with the students in your school. Obviously, it would contain questions related to alcohol, tobacco, and other drug use. It contains questions on where students obtain alcohol and drugs. And more recently, I skipped ahead a little bit faster than I wanted to, but more recently we've added questions around mental illness, and we assess whether students may have a low, moderate, or high need for treatment so that there can be plans put in place for early intervention and prevention, because if we can catch these problems early, we can prevent so many costly and deadly outcomes for our youth. So in prevention, we operated off of something called the Ecological Model. And basically what that means is that there are risk and protection in every facet or every domain, if you will, that this student is involved in. So again, as I said before, it doesn't do a lot of good to say someone has an issue if you don't know what the driving cause of that issue is. And that's simply what risk and protection measures. A risk factor is exactly what it sounds like. It's a factor in that student's life that would put that child more at risk for a problem like substance use or mental illness or poor academic performance. And a protective factor is simply something that would protect that student from having that problem. And so what I think is really key to mention, because like I said before, students bring in issues from their outside life. And so the great thing about the OPNA is that it actually measures risk and protection in every single domain. So it measures individual risk and protective factors. We all know there are things like genetics and other things that are just related to the individual. It assesses risk in the family domain. It assesses risk and protection in the school domain and in the community domain at large. And that way, all of these partners and all of these entities can work to create better environments for those students. So here is one sample of the type of valuable information that you can get from the OPNA. So this one happened to be from 2016, and it's the overall state. Look at the state's information. So I don't know how well you can read it, but this table is divided. This is just an overall look at the risk of different risk factors in every one of those domains. So it's the level of risk that students have in the peer and the individual domain, like are they engaging in antisocial behavior? Do they have antisocial peers? And there's you know, a number of different questions. We don't just simply ask students, do you have antisocial peers? There's a number of relevant questions that go into determining that are more user-friendly. So these are scales. We ask about risk in the school domain, the family domain, and the community. I didn't put it in the slide, but there's a very similar slide for every domain that shows protective factors, because you don't want to just know what's risky. You want to know what's going well, because then you can capitalize on those things, and you can also brag about those things in your community. Okay, so here's a couple of examples of survey questions. How wrong do you think it is for someone your age to pick a fight with someone? On how many occasions, if any, have you used marijuana in the past 30 days? If you skip school, would you be caught by your parents? That shows, that measures their perception of risk of getting caught, which is an important factor in preventing certain behaviors. If I had a personal problem, I could ask my mom or dad for help, and we measure if that's true for that student. Did I skip one? Nope. Okay, so let's talk a minute about how to implement the OPNA. So as you can see, the implementation window has already begun. We started on February 1st. So if you think that you might want to participate, or you need to know if you are, it's important to get that done as soon as possible, because we did extend it to the end of the school year due to the teacher walkout, and we wanted schools to have plenty of time, but obviously we're coming up on that, so the planning would need to start pretty quickly. You would have to complete the superintendent agreement form. Every superintendent should have already received this form, and it was sent by, what's that? We can absolutely, Carrie is pointing out to me that we can absolutely resend it, because obviously there's been a lot going on. So if they don't know if they have it, or you would like another copy to just take by, you absolutely can get one from us. But they should have received one from the Department of Mental Health. It includes enrollment numbers for each grade, and has some information about designating a survey coordinator for your district. So in districts, we attempt to survey at least 70% of your 6th, 7th, 10th, and 12th grade. That's so that we know that the information that you get is representative. Now, you know, you could, even if your entire district is not taking this survey, but you can convince your superintendent, let's say, to at least let alternative ed take the survey by virtue of the fact that we know that there's some higher risk there at times, then we would want to try to get 70% of each of these grades in your school, and then we could have some meaningful information about what's going on in your school, and that would allow perhaps your program or your school to apply for certain funding or to make a plan for how to reduce problems. Survey training materials and consent forms will be sent to the survey coordinator by the Department of Mental Health. So you can communicate with DMH, that would be Carrie, or your local RPC if you're working with them already or want to reach out to them, or tribal entity, as many of them are already also helping recruit for OPNA on your anticipated survey date and whether you prefer the paper or the online option. The paper option survey sent to the survey coordinator is anticipated that 45 to 60 minutes is needed. The online option is a little bit faster, but we know it's not a possibility for everyone, but a link is sent to the district coordinators within at least 2 weeks of the survey date, and it takes about 20 to 30 minutes to complete. So just working with different superintendents in different districts and then also having family members, we have been made aware of some of the potential issues or concerns that people have with the OPNA. So I wanted to address a few common ones with you all. One is people that have said, I don't want my district's data to be released publicly. So I will tell you that RPCs use county-wide data and they use regional data to plan. They do not go out and use school-specific data without the school's permission. The superintendent is emailed a district-level report from Bach Harrison. That is our survey contractor that Department of Mental Health works with to conduct the survey. And anyone who wants this report will only get it with written permission from the superintendent. So we don't go out and start publicizing school-specific or district-specific data. Obviously, a huge factor is time. We just don't have time to conduct this survey. So again, the paper survey takes approximately 45 minutes of class time, and the online survey takes 20 to 30 minutes, and that is of student time every other year. And then you can use this data for planning for things that are, these risk and protective factors have been shown in the literature time and time again to affect academic performance, school performance, and other problem behaviors. So it's not just a survey somebody sat around and made up. It's been well tested and well evaluated. And something that's not on this slide that I want to say is that when we or your RPC advises you about strategies, I know one of the fears is not just the time to take the survey, but it's the time to do something about the problem. So it's like, okay, I find out that I have an underage drinking problem. Well, I don't have time to do more curriculum. So we completely understand that. And one of the things that we want to help you to know is that not every strategy is just a curriculum add-on. There are some strategies that have behavioral health outcomes that are more in line with what you might call classroom management strategies, and they actually have shown in peer-reviewed literature to save classroom time every day. So they reduce things like transition times for teachers. We know transition time is a big one. So there's a great evidence-based strategy around that that actually also has longevity studies, and it has really great outcomes around substance abuse it's been measured well into late 20s. So there are things where you can not just give more information, but actually save classroom time, save teacher time, and help with behavioral health issues at the same time. So don't think that it's all just adding more content to the classroom. Also, local, regional, or prevention coordinators or your RPCs are often able to help you with the survey coordination if that's an issue. So what if parents or students don't want to participate or their parents don't want them to? That's fine. Parents or students can just choose not to take the survey or allow their child to take the survey. Typically, what we use is a passive parental consent form, and it's all that's required. You may choose if you want to use the active consent form, that's fine, but the passive is all that is required. And obviously, anything of this nature is voluntary and people can opt out. Another common question that we hear is that students won't be truthful anyway, so it's a waste of time. And so we wanted to let you know that there are validity questions that are built into the survey instrument. So data from any student who fails the validity questions will be excluded. So there are measures to prevent untruthfulness, in other words. The Bach Harrison analysis has shown that only 3 to 5% are eliminated through 5 different validity checks that are incorporated into the survey. And I will say, too, that having spent quite an extensive amount of time combing through the results of certain district surveys, that the answers are very reliable in terms of their consistency. So like when there are certain measures that students may score high on, and if you would expect, okay, well, if they score high on something like antisocial behavior, then they would likely score also high on antisocial peers. And you see that consistency time and time again, which lends credibility in my mind, in addition to, you know, the validated scientific research that shows that it is a validated instrument. But, you know, you can observe that when you comb through your results, because you will see your, you know, schools that score high on one question will score high on a corresponding question, and a school that ranks the lowest in the district will typically rank also the lowest on that corresponding question. So you don't find these really wild results that are all over the place that don't make sense. Also, another key important point to point out is that qualitative research has shown that most students enjoy being able to have their voices heard through an anonymous survey. And I know one of the things that we talk about in our world a lot is how often we plan things for youth without ever talking to youth. And that's a major, major problem. And this is just one really important way that you can actually talk to your youth and ask them about things that are important. So very quickly, I wanted to just talk to you guys about the Oklahoma City Area Intertribal Health Board. This is a group that was awarded $4 million in the state of Oklahoma from the federal government for the Partnership for Success grant. They're a partner of ours in our state Partnership for Success grant. And we had some tribal entities in our state attempt in the past, but they were not awarded. But in this instance, this group used the OPNA, and that was the main source of data that was used in this grant application, I believe. And so they were able to bring that $4 million to Oklahoma. So this is money that is largely going to work to better the communities, and I believe much of what they're working on is geared towards students specifically. So that's resources for students that are in our public school system, and that was obtained because of schools that participated in the OPNA. And one of the important things, we worked with this group to prepare a Native American special report of the OPNA, and it did show disparities between Native and non-Native, and that is something that this group is able to address in a data-driven way to help improve equity among students. This group was highlighted because the OPNA provided high-quality substance abuse data about Native youth, which is very difficult to obtain. And they're using that data to track the impact of their programs. Okay, so at this time, I want to make sure that I leave a moment for questions.